Hello, Starshine. My name is Liz and this is my channel, Simsational Stories. If you have not seen my videos before and you enjoy this one, please like and subscribe. And maybe check out my Facebook page where this whole thing began as well. All relevant links are in the description below. And of course, if you're a Sims player and you'd like to download any of the characters featured in my stories, just search the hashtag Simsational Stories on the Sims 4 gallery. All original content is created by This Is Not Eric. Alrighty then. So, welcome, and what is up, Buttercup? Are you having a good day? Or a bad day? Whichever your answer, please allow me to distract you from your life and tell you a story, a Simsational story. Before I begin though, I'd like to issue this blanket content and trigger warning. The following story is just Sims, hey. I'm not going to apologise for treating them terribly, if that's what I've done, But I do want to assure you now that although I mean absolutely no harm, I completely understand if you feel unable to consume my content. Many loves, and we will catch each other on the internet elsewhere. Okay, so now we've gotten that over with, let's go. Today's story is from the Fundamentalist Ferguson family, and we're at chapter 5. If you have not seen previous chapters and would like to catch up, there are playlists available on my channel so you can hear the entire story in chronological order. The rest of us are going to move on from where we left off last time though. So without further ado. Elijah and Esther Ferguson were no longer toddlers. They were now children. They were growing up into distinct characters too, with Elijah's natural tendency to go with the flow, making his young life a lot easier than his twins. Elijah was a quietly confident child who couldn't understand how or why his sister was always looking for trouble. Esther wasn't trying to look for trouble. She swore she wasn't. She wanted to be good, and she tried so hard to be who and what her parents wanted her to be. As soon as she was told to do a thing, she did it. But somehow it always seemed that she was getting into things or liking things that were inappropriate for little girls to do. From an early age, Esther had been assigned a list of chores that her twin brother had always escaped, which wasn't fair. Just because she was a girl, Esther was expected to help her mother out with both the baby and the housework, any spare second she had, while Elijah was free to do as he pleased. It wasn't just chores either. As soon as his son was old enough, Cameron had enrolled him in Scouts, but Esther wasn't allowed to join her brother and learn how to tie cool knots and stuff. No, instead she had to play piano. She hated piano. She wanted to play outside with everyone else. Addison tried to explain to her daughter that this was just the way the world was, and that she should find joy in caring for her menfolk and family, as Addison did. But Esther was having none of it. She and Elijah were twins. Why couldn't they just get treated equally? It was all just an excuse. Like, yeah, okay, her dad did work hard all day, but, so did her mum. She and Elijah both went to school, and her mum kept the house and garden okay while her dad doctored. But then when they all came home, what happened? Elijah and her dad just got to sit around. It wasn't fair. Meanwhile, Esther was expected to keep not just her own room clean, but the boys' bedroom clean as well. She also had to collect and do all the laundry and then go help her mum start dinner before washing up after while her mum vacuumed. She barely got a moment to herself all day. Even if she did get all her chores done before dinner needed to be started, Esther still wasn't really allowed to just do whatever she wanted, like Elijah was the whole afternoon. No. Instead, she was expected to take charge of her little brother Edward, who was beginning to toddle into all sorts of trouble now. For Edward was 2 years old, and quite the handful. He had a boundless energy that exhausted his mother, and he was whip-smart. He missed his big sister and brother all day when they were at school, but their absence had also made him into an independent little tyke who was sometimes quite difficult to direct. For all these reasons and more, Edward was his father's favourite child. Cameron would often work late into the evening, and his first stop upon sneaking quietly upstairs was always to check on and tuck little Edward in. Only after that was done would Cameron then turn to his elder son, Elijah, and then onwards to go see his wife. He rarely looked in on Esther. Cameron and Addison honestly had an amazing relationship with one another. Theirs had actually been an arranged marriage, a common practice in their church. But it had been a very good match. Their opinions and temperament were perfectly suited, and they regularly thanked both their parents and God in their prayers for having brought them together. That was how it often happened, Cameron explained to his children. Fathers and mothers raised their children, and often knew their babies' temperaments better than the child in question did themselves at times. God knew this, and that was why he had ordained that a child must obey their parent. Parents knew best. Yet, if her parents knew best, why did Esther always feel so utterly misunderstood and entirely unsupported in who she naturally was? When she was 7, she had begged for a chemistry set for her birthday. And who had got it? Elijah. He hadn't even used it, let alone noticed her take it. Esther had played with that chemistry set for weeks in secret in her room. She'd kept it hidden in a box under her bed, and because she'd always kept her room so spotless, her mother never even really looked in there anymore. Esther had thought she was so smart and capable, and she really had learnt a lot. She hadn't learnt to hide the light under her door yet, though, and so when her mother walked past on the way to the bathroom late one night, she was sprung. Addison was furious with her young daughter. She had stolen from her brother. How could she do such a terrible thing? It was worse than that, of course. The deeper implications of what Esther had done were so disconcerting and worrying that Addison had barely been able to take the chemistry set and spit out, "Your father will speak to you in the morning. Go to bed." Speak to her he did. Cameron even called the hospital to let them know he would be late, and then he called the school to inform them that Esther would be taking the next few days off. It was obvious to him now that she had been neglecting her duties to God and needed to refocus herself. Cameron outlined the punishment for her sins with great severity and solemnity. First and foremost, Esther was to reacquaint herself with the Word of God. They had always had family worship on Sunday evenings after community worship, but now she was to study privately with her parents in the evenings as well. Every evening. As soon as dinner was completed, she was to do 2 hours of reading before going straight to bed. The following morning, Esther was expected to write a 1,000-word essay on the matters they had gone over the night before and her own interpretations of the text. Her father would then mark these in the afternoons when he got home from work and critique them that night over dinner before moving on to his sermon. Next on Esther's list was chores. She had been spending far too much time stroking her own ego with knowledge and needed to become humble once more. Esther had always had a few basic household chores to do, but now those were doubled, almost tripled. She would get up before dawn to fetch the eggs, then clean the chicken coop, the cow's barn, and then get started on the garden. Her mother would usually join her sometime during the weeding, after she had finished her own indoor chores and settled Edward somewhere safe. Together, Addison and Esther would tend to the livestock and garden the Ferguson household kept, before going inside to start the boys' breakfast. Esther hadn't been to school now in almost a week. Nor would she be going. The following Monday, when Addison told Esther to get ready for school, she was ecstatic. She couldn't wait to see her friends, until she was stopped at the door and redirected to the kitchen, where her mother sat her down to inform her that from now on, she was to be homeschooled. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 5 of the Fundamentalist Ferguson family. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can tune in soon to hear the next chapter. And hey, maybe think about sharing my channel with a friend. Or don't. It's your life. Anyway, bye!